I'll make just a couple of comments. I think it remains to be seen the overall effect and possibly some unintended consequences of signing day. Again, through all the discussions, the intent of an early signing day was efficiency and cost effectiveness for everyone. So much of the recruiting process has started now, man, as early as the 9th grade for some of these kids, and many have chosen and are solidly committed at an earlier date. That's what's been manifest over time. And so as coaches, we voted and we approved an early signing period. The intent simply is to allow these kids to go on with the rest of their high school experience without the extra stress, for the schools to lock up those kids that truly wanted to come, and for then the second period coming up to be more efficient and targeted by all parties involved. Some unintended consequences that have already manifest. I think we underestimated as coaches the difficulty of preparing for a bowl game around signing day. So that I think there was very little conversation about it through all of the discussions. In fact, I don't ever remember it being mentioned. However, now, and our game is not till next week, but I was in game planning meetings all day, and texts and phone calls were coming in, and yeah, we were polled. Some teams are traveling to bowl games today. Some, the ones that were playing prior to, that would even be more difficult. And so I think there'll be some pretty strong follow-up discussions about this. And I'm not sure anyone knows yet for sure how it will manifest and what will be the benefit of it. So I think the jury's still out that way. From our perspective, the young men that have signed, the 18 that have signed, they made their commitments. We accepted them. We wanted them all. We're going to wait for all of them. If there was not an early signing date, it would have just been normal. But it just is. I think it's a relief and a celebration to them, and a relief and a celebration to us that now we can just go forward. And I have run into something else that was unanticipated, and that is there are some high school coaches that, for one reason or another, don't want to celebrate or put on 2 signing day celebrations, so to speak. And I'm not sure what the motive is there. It seems like for the young men that want to sign, then make that a big deal on the early signing date, and then a month later do it again. So that they only want to put the time and effort in to do it once is kind of mind-boggling to me. And I'm not sure what other motive there might be. And so I've run into that just once so far, but other coaches have mentioned that as well. So that's kind of a unique thing that none of us as college coaches thought would be on the radar. But I'm excited about our class. We're continuing to fill our needs. We're continuing to build our roster. We're continuing to add good players and good students and good people, and just taking another step forward. So with that, I'm sure there are questions. I'll be glad to answer them.
With Brendan and Bryce, I know they're 2 dual threat kind of quarterbacks. When you were recruiting them, what kind of pitch did you make to them? I know that Bryce said that you showed him tape from Taysom Hill. I mean, was that something you were really actively going after, was somebody that could maybe do different things? And
yeah, we were actually clear 2 years ago as to what our preferred style of play would be. Sometimes the preferred style and the roster you have and the possible solutions that are available, those don't all match. And I think the really skilled coaches are the ones that, while they're building programs, they make the most of the resources they have. And the best way that I've framed it, or at least the way that makes sense to me, is sometimes you do what you have to do on the way to what you want to do. And we had an opportunity now to add 2 very good players, good leaders and productive players at quarterback that are dual threat, and that's our ideal. We would rather play that style. And we know how to do it and had success with it with Taysom Hill at BYU, and so that was just a reference point that we could show them that it will be similar to, not identical, but there'll be some of these concepts that we think that you'll fit very well in, and so that's that's what we were saying, and we made it clear that they were in our plans to do so.
Do you hope to kind of have Bryce kind of be the bridge to someone like Brennan? Is that the idea? Or?
Wow, I think Bryce is a lot more than a bridge. He's man, he's fast and he's dynamic. I think the way to frame it would be the eligibility stacking in terms of what years. That's the best way, and ideally we still could have taken and used one more. However, our choice was with the quality of players we got by both of those guys. It didn't make sense. And I'm not talking an underclassman. I'm talking possibly even if it was a grad transfer. So then you could probably have the stacking lined up, but with as good a player as Bryce is coming out of junior college and a really good true freshman, with both coming at mid-year, we found, I think, a viable solution for our third spot with Devontae. And so we've chosen to push forward with those numbers.
Big part of, I think, what recruits were coming for in the previous classes for you were what you had done at BYU. Is there a real tangible difference now that, I mean, you can show them some success on the field and
Sure.
say, hey, it's happening here?
Yeah, the first class in 17 came knowing what was going to happen, and this class is coming now seeing that it is happening. They've already seen in 2 years the progress and the direction and the credibility that I think is apparent, and so it was easier, I would say, simply because there's tangible proof that they're seeing on the field of where and how they might fit. They're also seeing where needs are and where there are deficits and where there are holes in the roster and how they might be able to fit in, and so that's been very impactful also.
That was sort of my second part of the question was, you played 17 true freshmen already this year. I'm imagining ideally you would prefer not to do that, but for recruits, is that a selling point?
Sure. At my last year, and I'm hesitant to say this because I don't remember the numbers exactly. It might have been over in my career, or it might have been just the last year. I think we played the third most freshmen. That was at Brigham Young, and that was even with an established and experienced roster. It might have just been the last year, but you can check the research on that. I would love to say that we wouldn't play as many freshmen again next year, but the reality of this is it might be the same this next year, and it might even be similar the following year. As we continue, again, we're thin, and so as we continue to develop depth and practice and play and rotate as much as we'd like to, there's going to be new faces, and that's okay. And our message to any player in our program is we're always going to be looking for better than, not equal to. And so our current players in the program and our development program is exceptional, and they need to manifest, or they need to take full advantage of that to stay ahead of the next class. And if they don't, my job is to add competition and provide leverage to make sure the whole program is elevating. And so I don't see it being 17 consistently for years, but maybe next year as well. It's hard to say.
Bronco back here. Excuse me, sorry. This may be kind of along the same lines, but you used, I think it was foundational class was the phrase you used for 2017. Is this class still part of building that foundation?
Man, I think that the foundational part, I think this is the accelerating, and so foundational is accelerating might be the next class. This is still building, and so foundational is where everything's built from, and man, how about framing? How about that? So if we're going foundational to framing, that seems to make sense. Yeah, from my knowledge of construction, it's the next step up, and the quality of people, why they're coming, and I feel really good about them, and I think the feeling is mutual, and so we have a few spots remaining, 7 by number, I think, with the 18, because the maximum you can sign is 25, and so there are still a few specific needs we'd like to solidify, but we've intentionally gone out and really worked hard to, now that we've seen our team for 2 years, our opponents in our league for 2 years, I think we're becoming more focused on the framing of what needs to happen.
You mentioned Devontae. Given his athletic ability, is it safe to assume you'd prefer not to just keep him under wraps as a number 3 quarterback
That's right.
to be used only in the event of injuries? And if so,
Yeah.
do you keep him on the offensive side of the ball?
He'll be on the offensive side, but his homeroom won't be at quarterback. His homeroom will be at receiver, and he'll be being cross-trained. And he and Lindell Stone currently would kind of be our number 3. You know, there's different skill sets there. That would be if we're projecting that there isn't competition and it plays out like that. Lindell will have something to say about his performance in the spring. So he has competition now. The other 2 are coming in, and so we'll let that manifest, you know, through the off season and spring practice.
As if you didn't have enough to do with bowl prep and recruiting, have you formulated plans for your 10th assistant coach, which I guess you can hire as of January 9?
Yeah, I have made plans, am interviewing, have interviewed, and will continue to. That's going on even as we speak. And I think what you'll find with that is there will be existing coaches on staffs that are taken to become the 10th coach for other programs, and the domino effect of that, I'm not sure anyone knows. Most programs, at least at the Power 5 level, had made a selection for what they're calling an analyst or a quality control person 1 or 2 years ago, and have just been grooming and developing, waiting for an opportunity. And there are others that haven't chosen to do that are interviewing, as I am now. And so, and then if a coach is taken from one staff, then it'll just cause a shakeup. And so we'll see how that plays out as well. But yeah, that's going on even as we speak.
Do you know the specific role that 10th coach will play in terms of position side of the ball?
So the way that I frame hires is who first, then what. And so I look for the very best coaching candidate and person that I can find, and then really allocate where they might fit. That's a really broad generalization, knowing that, so it's who first, but I know exactly what position I think would fit best, what area in recruiting I think would fit best, and what personality traits or impact I would like to have them add. And I won't share those, but I have a very specific filter that I'm looking for. But that's only if I really like and want to work with the person. If they fit all those other things and I don't like them, then I'm not going to work with them.
I got a 2-part question for you. The first part being, you mentioned a minute ago that you have other needs that you want to address in this class. What do you feel like those needs are? And then the second part of the question being, you do have several committed kids who did not sign today. How do you sort of frame or describe their status in terms of your recruiting class as of now?
Yeah, someone that is committed that didn't sign, I have to treat like they're not committed. There's other than a high school coach that wants to be involved, he's really done that at the peril of his player. Some are doing that because they want them to recruit it higher than or go different places than where they are, even though the player is committed. And when there's someone that wants to be that influential, we have to then prepare as if they're not coming, if there's someone working as an antagonist in that circumstance. So any player that we had committed that chose not to sign today, we have to prepare and recruit as if they're not going to sign. And it's hard, but man, there was no rules against signing, and so if they're committed, it doesn't make sense not to sign.
And the first part of the question was, what other needs do you feel like you have in this class?
The other needs we have remaining, we would like another wide receiver, possibly a graduate transfer to add some experience for Donnie and Andre as they move on. And so I think that that would add value. We'd look for another defensive back still, even though that's the strength of our team probably coming back. We'd still like to have more depth and really bright and young players to train for the future there. Another defensive lineman, I think we would add, certainly. And then probably one more offensive lineman. And then whatever best available players would be left, I would consider them. So those are pretty specific needs that I would say we still have remaining, or wants.
Bronco, you mentioned after you guys played Miami, such a good game, that a lot of recruits had responded to that success. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure.
Has that helped you since then? And
Sure.
is it more with this class or the last class?
It's helped for our current class, some of the kids that we just signed and some we're still interested in, and also just as we expand and kind of grow our recruiting in terms of relationships. As I traveled there, really every coach that I visited with was you had them, they knew you had them, and it's too bad that you weren't able to finish that game. But there's credibility, and so the impact and the perception of those kids, considering Virginia now is in a different place than what it was, and so that's helpful.
Coach, just following up on the National Early Signing Day conversation, you'd mentioned high school coaches. You've been very outspoken about the integrity of the process, how you want potential student athletes treated by your staff. Is there a period you would prefer, an August or September, or are you like December as far as the early signing period?
I like December now that I've seen it with modifications of possibly maybe I don't know, a few days before and after where there aren't bowl games, just to be fair for the teams that kind of ran into that scheduling conflict. And so again, we don't play till next Thursday, and I felt the impact, but I think that would be too far to go. But possibly this week, where their signing date, maybe keeping that as an open period for no bowl games is maybe just one of the ways that I could see of improving the process, at least at this stage. Hard to know until we get all the way through the next one in February, but that's some of my early takeaway.
What happened today with Tavares Kelly? I know that you guys, or at least the Twitter account, seemed to be surprised that he had committed. Was there some sort of story behind what kind of happened there today?
So Tavares he's an amazing player and an amazing young man, and just really we worked hard on. We work as hard as we can on education of what the signing and early signing look like, and their school is one that, man, they're going to have a lot of players sign. And I think there's a collective group of those kids that wanted everyone to wait and do it the second signing period. And somewhere in there, Tavares chose to sign today, which was great. And he was committed. We were just happy that he announced it.
Is that kind of what you're referring to when you're talking about coaches that are?
Man, there's a whole continuum, and I can't speculate on all the reasons, but there are some recruiting classes from a school that are wanting everyone to wait, and it's hard to even know the motives. Again, it's hard to say why someone would be truly committed and have a chance to sign and not, and so I'm still trying to grasp it. But I've got feedback from a coach that just wants to do it once, regardless of what that implies, and I've got some feedback from young men trying to sign together, and I don't think either one of them makes any sense, but that's just from my perspective as a college coach.
You have 18 players on here, and you've had success recruiting in lots of different areas, but only 3, I think, guys from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Is that a concern?
Yeah, it's a concern and also an emphasis, and so it's where we start, meaning that our first priority and where we go immediately is our own state. And so our huge emphasis right now is to prevent kids from leaving the state if we want them and if they're qualified to come to UVA. And again, that isn't everybody. They have to be a very good player, capable of helping us win the ACC, have great character, and be a good student. But my ideal would be to have up to about a third of the class coming from in-state. And I think there are enough players to populate that type of roster. And so it just shows the amount of work we still need to do in that area. And I think as we continue to win more and more and become more and more established, we'll see that number shift. But it's step by step right now.
One of the guys who is in state is also one of the smaller guys, and Billy Kemp. What is your outlook for him?
So I like Billy a lot at camp. We didn't have anyone that came to camp who could cover him, and then he switched over when other players didn't seem to really want to compete, and he played defense, and then no one could catch the ball on him. And then he stayed, and just to show us as we there was punts and kickoffs flying around. He was catching those any possible way. He was just the best player on the field at any position on that day. And that to me made more sense than any of the lack of measurables in terms of size. He's just a really good football player who knows how to win 3 state championships. And again, I saw it with my own eyes. He was the best player we had come to camp. And so he'll be in a position similar to where Alameda plays, and similar to where Tavares Kelly is. They're both dynamic. Tavares is very, very fast. I think 10.500 last year. And Billy is more quick and productive oriented, but they're both kind of really dynamic kids in a similar body size. So it'd be fun to get them the ball in unique ways, and Alameda's position is the closest one I can say that is what we currently have for that.
Do you have target heights and weights for the positions? And if so, how reluctant are you to, take a kid who doesn't meet that standard, and what does he have to do to make you take him?
Yeah, we're very specific. There's a grade 1 through 10 for the measurables, and the lower that grade is, the more the intangibles and productivity have to be, the higher that has to be to balance it out. And so if, for instance, a player is 1 on the measurables, meaning height and weight, they better be amazingly productive to where you can't wait to get the ball to them in some way, because regardless of their size, they're so dynamic. And anytime, again, the best way I can describe it is the smaller or the lower the measurables, the higher the productivity or intangibles. And so the reluctance has to go away based on that. I think, and ultimately I have the final say on that, and seeing is believing. And so the kids that might seem short or might seem light, that just means that I think there's something else that they're doing that warrants that, taking them.
Fair to say that your first 2 years here, place kicking has been problematic. Is Hunter?
You're being nice to me.
Is Hunter someone who can come in right away and remedy that?
Hope so. Yeah, that's the idea of adding another player on scholarship to that position. We actually were very accurate kicking PATs and field goals. We just didn't attempt many, and there weren't many long distance ones that were adding a real tangible threat that way. So we know we have to get better there, and we're hoping we've addressed it. I can't say once and for all, but hopefully we've addressed it to the level now where the conversation is different next year. On the opposite, or the conversely, really happy with Lester Coleman, and that is man, our punting. I think I might have been even. I'm not going to say I was less concerned about that. Maybe slightly less than our PATs and field goals, but I was concerned, and he handled that really well. So, and he'll be coming back for another year as well. So I'm excited about that part.
You mentioned that you were concerned about the Virginia in-state recruiting. Have you had to change your strategy or approach in trying to integrate yourself with coaches in the state?
It's not necessarily changing the strategy. It's just taking time. And so building relationships, identifying the kids early enough. And in our particular state, the expectation from the families and the coaches is a lot of these kids, and I'm really hesitant and reluctant, and I don't think it's good for college football. Some are being offered in the 9th grade, and I don't know how you do that, and I don't know how it helps anybody, and ultimately I'm having to choose whether to play that game against my moral beliefs of how can that be possible, that we'll know someone's good enough in the 9th grade or will become a college athlete. And I don't think it really helps their development. And in many cases, I think it sets them back. And then all that happens is the schools that are offering that early, they just simply withdraw the offer if it doesn't work out, which that's not right. so there's a very unique kind of backstory right now. And I'm not just going to say it's the state of Virginia, that college coaches are having to choose, okay, if it means you don't get the recruits, if you don't start offering 9th grade, some are doing it in the 8th grade. I don't understand how that's good for anyone. And so as I serve on the AFCA board, I'm trying to push it the other way, where less contact, further back on when they can be offered, and the later the better, so we can actually let them earn their chance to be recruited and then see what their grades are. A lot of these kids are being offered, they haven't taken the SAT, they haven't even taken measurable courses yet that count, and they're being offered scholarships with the simple intent that those schools, if it doesn't work out, they just withdraw them. And it just doesn't quite seem good for young people or the game. And so, again, the context is changing strategy. I've chosen not to engage that early. But it seems like the expectation from some high school coaches and families is that then means we don't want them. And I've tried to explain that's not the case. And so somewhere in there is the answer to your question.
Other than winning, is there anything else that you guys are considering and trying to make those inroads?
Oh, I think just relationships and time. You know, we've had two seasons to do so, and I think we're making significant progress as far as that goes. But it also just shows where we're starting from, and so I think it will continue to get better and better. And every time an in-state coach comes to see us and watch us practice, they leave an advocate and a fan, and that's and aligned, which is great. And so it's not only me getting out to see them and be involved, it's also then the invitations that we've extended, having high school coaches come and see what we're doing. And so again, time and consistency builds trust. And I'd love to say in 2 years, all of a sudden, we've just taken over the state, but that's not the case at this point.
I know Jalen was someone that just committed to you guys last night. Was that a surprise, and what was kind of the process there, and what does he potentially bring to the team?
We really like him. He reminds us a lot of Bryce Hall, meaning he played receiver, and he's very, very good with the ball in terms of ball skills. He's long, he's tall, he's fast. He's a very good tackler, and he can play either side of the ball. And we thought he was, if you kind of use business vernacular, an undervalued asset, where we thought his ability, here's were his current offerings, and it was just like, what a great opportunity. We brought him on a visit, and as soon as he got back, others saw that, and like they'd just been waiting and hoping he was secret, and the offers started to come then, and others encouraging him now to wait to another signing day. Which, why would you wait to another signing day when there's one right there? If they wanted him, then offer him. And they missed a recruiting window, and they realized all that happened is their recruiting strategy of hoping he was uncovered would go past early signing, and he wasn't not uncovered. We found him, and it was a great fit.
We'll have a question from Mike and David, and then we'll wrap up here.
If I can ask you one that's off this, as you prep for Navy, have you seen the knowledge or the learning from the Georgia Tech game translate defensively to practice, or is it almost like starting over in terms of
there's a reference point that's certainly helpful. Being here 2 years and playing Georgia Tech twice with our team, that is an initial point of reference, but Navy's significantly different. But those principles are really helpful. And so anything that's similar that Navy is doing, we're certainly at a different place with those principles as we are with some of the things that they're doing that Georgia Tech hasn't done in terms of exposure, but we have extra days, which is helpful.
And whether it's going back to your time as an assistant or at BYU, is this your first whoopee? Whoopee?
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. I was trying to figure out what that was. Yeah.
That doesn't count as a question.
We, in looking at your class so far, for those of us in the recruiting industry, it seems like wide receiver, linebacker are the two places that you probably feel the most confident. I'll ask the question otherwise. What are the positions that really stand out to you, and why do you feel so good about the guys you got at those positions?
I'll start with quarterback first, just because of who's coming. I really like Bryce, and I really like Brennan. And so I think we were really strong in both of those kids' evaluations and their commitments. And so I'm excited about them. Linebacker, just by simple ability, seeing the size, seeing the speed, seeing the production, and the numbers that we got, that seems to be a position that is really accessible for us here as well as in the secondary, and so that continues. I continue to see how that might help us building for the future and where our allocation, our resources might go. And we need receivers, and so we got 2 good young receivers, which I really like. What we haven't addressed yet is immediate experience, and again, there's a gap in the roster from Donnie and Andre, and that doesn't mean our young players aren't skilled, but there's a gap between young and skilled and experienced and upper class, and we need to try to get that addressed.
Again, I'll go a little off topic, but some of us haven't seen you since New York, and obviously you have extolled Micah throughout your time here. But what was it like to see him on that stage and to kind of share him with the entire college football world?
I was grateful, first of all, that I was able to be part of that evening and to have worked with Micah. It was really gratifying. But I was particularly touched that it was that award. And there's a lot of awards, and there's a lot of different things that are publicized, and most of them are one-dimensional, meaning on-field only. And that seems to be what we value, society values, and entertainment values. I loved that this particular award was reflecting not only leadership but academics. And I mean, college football is amateur sport, and we are supposed to be developing young people, and we are supposed to be valuing other things. And to be part of that night with him in that context and that award was really gratifying, fulfilling, and to me it's the perfect award for someone from UVA to get, where there's exceptional on-field performance, exceptional academic performance, and then exceptional leadership, which in my opinion what they were referring to, or maybe his acknowledgement, came for the role that he played in some of the challenges we had in Charlottesville this year, and rightly so. He did an exceptional job, and if college football can't build or isn't intending to build those type of people and only valuing on the field, then I think we're just becoming professional sport, and that's not what I support or want to do.